good.
I want to welcome you to Woman's Talk with Yaya Diamond. I'm Yaya Diamond, and yes, I have extensive makeup on today, but we had a photo shoot, so I have an excuse, and I have a music video this evening, so I figured double take, like right here. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. There's a lot of things that women go through. Okay, I can't say that men don't go through them too. I'm not going to say that, but we're talking about women. We're talking about us, the female aspect. And there's something that my guest and I have in common, and I don't think she knows this. Abuse is something, and molestation and just different things happen at a very young age. For me, it wasn't too young, but it was around 10 and 11 years old, and it was dramatic. And yes, it did leave a mark on me, but it left a mark where I wanted to kill people. That was the mark it left on me. So I took martial arts, and I became a FBBA world champion, and I did all kinds of things. And I said to myself, if a man ever touched me in a way that I did not like, he would be maimed for life. Just put it that way. That was the word I used because I was young. But today I use the word castrated. So, but moving right along, come on, how many of us women have gone through this? And there's been some men that have gone through this too, and it's traumatizing. And if it happens in a very young age, at least, like 7 and under, you don't learn certain skills to survive in the world. And that is what my client actually is talking about today. I'm going to call her my client because I'm feeling like we have so much in common that I'm going to help her and she's going to help me. So I'm her client and she's mine today. Welcome to the show. Please tell everybody who you are. And you now have a 501c3, right?
I do. My name's Deanna Carpenter, and I'm so happy I finally got my 501c3. So I am a complete nonprofit agency now, which is, I'm so ecstatic about it. And no, I did not know that about you. Oh my gosh. So my nonprofit's emerging from the dark because that's how I feel. I feel like I've lived in the dark most of my life because of my abusive past. And I feel like I've just started getting out into the light. And not only am I getting out into the light, but with my nonprofit, I'm hoping to bring others out into the light. And really, I know abuse is talked about, right, but I feel like as survivors, we don't have the skills needed to put in perspective how abuse continually affects our lives.
Right.
Like, everybody focuses on the actual event of abuse, and no one really talks about the after effects.
Right.
I'm in my 50s now and still being affected by something that happened when I was 3. And for me, learning the skills to put into words how it affects me now was extremely important, because you with the martial arts and wanting to lash out in anger.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was the opposite. I unfortunately wound up in more abusive situations because I was such a helper and I wanted to fix people all the time because if I was focusing on someone else, I didn't have to fix me.
Right.
I didn't have to look at that darkness in me. I could fix other people. And it actually took, we talk about all the bad things that happened with the pandemic, and it actually took the pandemic to get me to where I am today. because I was working 2 jobs, I was going to school, I was raising my
Mhm.
kids, I was doing everything to stay busy and not focus on me.
Right.
And when the pandemic happened, I lost my jobs, and it's horrible out there trying to find new ones.
Mhm.
And so I had all this alone time with just myself,
Yeah.
my thoughts, my brain, my emotions. And
Mhm.
for the first time in my life, I started connecting with them and realizing that I missed out on a lot. And some of those things that I missed out on were learning skills that I need to not only survive, but really
Right.
thrive in life.
Mhm.
And two of those are communication
Mhm.
and self awareness. Because it took, like I said, it took the pandemic for me to become self aware. I just realized that I've been helping all these people so that I have to focus on me.
Right.
I've been staying busy and staying in college for, 20 years to not focus on me.
Hmm.
Um and so I took that and I said, okay, all of this is it's meaningful and not just to me.
Right.
This happened to me and I'm supposed to do something with it.
Mhm.
And I started the process of setting up a 501c3 with the focus on doing research for survivors to
Mhm.
see how best they can learn the skills that we don't have, those
Yeah.
communications and self-awareness skills.
Right.
So yeah,
Wow.
but it's been fantastic and it's definitely a great experience. I've been talking to survivors, male and female, from all over the world,
Mhm.
which is amazing. I'll have conversations with survivors, and yeah, we'll talk about abuse and we'll talk about life. But it's really funny because we'll also talk about, okay, I'm eating an Oreo, and they're like, "What is an Oreo?" Like in the UK, they don't know what an Oreo is. So
Oh, wow.
it's been so amazing, not just on the abuse side, but just in my personal growth in reaching out across the ocean and meeting and talking to all these other people. It's just been fantastic.
I find that I have certain skills that you may not have because it happened to me a little bit later on in life. And I knew what was going on and I knew it was wrong. And I alerted my mom
Oh, that's fantastic.
immediately. So it wasn't something that continued. And the reason that, I kind of understood it because my mom told me, people just don't do this for a reason. There's a sickness that they have and they're sick in their brain, is what my mom told me. So if ever something should happen like that, you let me know because I'm not going to be mad at you. I'm going to be mad
That's
at
wonderful.
them. And you're
That's
not going to get in
wonderful.
trouble, but they are going to get in a lot of trouble. So when it did happen, I did alert my mom, and it was eye opening. And
Oh,
like I said, it
absolutely.
was something that happened to me a lot later in life. So I said to myself, he's sick. He's sick. Something's wrong with him. He needs help.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't put it on myself to think it was my problem. It wasn't my problem. It wasn't my fault. It was his fault.
Right. Well,
And
and I think
so,
that that you having a supportive mom,
oh
it
yeah,
makes all the difference in the world.
my mom is amazing. Is amazing. My mother's amazing. So, the skills I had, you didn't have, unfortunately. And this happens to so many children. It's so sad. Like it's psychologically, children are mimicking until the age of around 7 or 8 years old. So they don't have a set go-to like we do as an adult, but at 10, I had a set go-to. I knew that certain things were right and certain things were wrong. This is the way it happens. This is what I should do. This is what I shouldn't do. Behavior was already set. It was
Mm-hmm.
already there. For you, you didn't have any of that. So how are you able now to go back and recapture and refocus and teach yourself and to do these things? How were you able to do that?
Sure. So, just a real quick background on my abuse. So, my abuse started at 3, and it was my brother. And then that went on until I was about 10. And then I had a little bit of a break of normalcy for about 6 months before my dad started abusing me. And that happened from about the age of 11 to 15. So I never had the normalcy of any kind of a childhood. I was always, in certain areas, I was always different than my peers. So when all of that happened, I never said anything. You know, when I was little, I didn't know that it was wrong. It it felt wrong at times, but it, you know, when you're 3 and 4 or 5 years old and your family member, somebody that's supposed to love you and trust you, is doing something, you don't realize that it's wrong.
Right.
Um, you know, by the time my dad started abusing me, I knew it was wrong, but because of who he was, um, I did not think I could say anything. And this was in the 80s too, when people still didn't really talk, 70s and 80s, when people didn't really talk
Right.
about abuse, really,
Yeah, it was
you
a
know?
taboo. It was, yeah, yeah.
Right. And so, the first time I went through counseling, I was 24. That was the first time that I ever spoke to anybody about my abuse, save my mother. I did tell my mom when I was 15 about my brother and my dad. It was not a good experience for me having that discussion, because I did not get the support at that time that I needed either. So I was 24 when I first went to counseling. I went through my first session. I think I was in counseling for a year or two the first time. Then I went to counseling a little bit more when I was in my 30s. And then I just recently, a few years ago, did a little bit more. And I always tried different types of counseling because they always talked about something different. Like
Okay.
they all focused on something different. The first time was getting over that initial trauma and really connecting to my emotions, because before the counseling, I could have told you facts and intimate details and not had any emotion about it, because
Wow.
I did not connect myself to it. Once I connected to my emotions, boy, was there a lot of anger. So I
Yeah.
can totally feel that for you.
Yeah.
Um, and so the talking therapy is great. The cognitive therapy is great. This last round of therapy that I went to was actually hypnotherapy, because I felt there were things that were triggers in my subconscious that I still couldn't recognize. So that helped a lot. And I have found, the thing that helps me the most is writing. And so I just free write whatever's on my mind. It makes no sense. Half of them aren't sentences, might just be words, but I'm getting it out. And then I just started talking. I went through a communications program and started teaching communications to people, which is ironic, since I had no skills at communications. But the communications, that really helped me understand like how people are supposed to communicate.
Right.
So that helped me with that piece. The self-awareness, it's still coming, quite frankly. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely more in tune with myself than I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I think that one of the things that a lot of survivors do that are like me is we keep ourselves busy. I mean,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
24/7, we are busy, 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 busy,
Busy.
because
Always.
then we don't have to face what's going on with ourselves. And so
Right.
we really push that self awareness away once
Mm-hmm.
we're out of the abusive situations.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the pandemic, I can't keep myself as busy unless I'm,
Yeah.
wasting time on the internet, just, Facebook and
I
scrolling,
gotcha.
you know,
Uh-huh.
that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't
Mm-hmm.
keep your mind busy. So
No.
I found my mind going backwards a lot during this time, and I started writing a lot again. And my 501(c)(3) started with a blog. That's how the whole thing started.
Mm-hmm.
I started because I decided I'm done protecting all of my abusers,
Right.
and I am now going to speak out whether they like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I started my website and started blogging about my stories and posted some of my poems and things like that, and
Mhm.
made a Twitter handle and started posting my stuff from my website to Twitter.
Mhm.
And people started reaching out to me. And that made me really dig deep in talking to them about my experience and their experience. And um, just having that quiet time alone forced
Right.
me to really focus
Well,
on me and my self-awareness.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
I know. As you were
pandemic
talking,
incident.
definitely. And yeah, as you were talking, I went back to that day. I mean, I remember everything. I remember what I was wearing. I mean, it's so weird. Like you remember it, you don't remember much of anything, but you remember that. It's kind of
You
like a,
remember that?
yeah, it's engraved in my
Hmm.
brain. It'll never go away. It's something that I will remember. I will remember the feeling. I will remember what I did after. I'll remember the apartment we lived in, the way it was formatted, the furniture, everything is like engraved in my head. And
Yeah.
so, but my attacker's dead.
Yeah, I have that too.
Dead.
One of mine is. And so I actually have a video on my website
Mm-hmm.
where I went to his grave. I actually have I got married right after high school, like a moron. And that guy turned out to be super abusive too. It's like I have this sign over my head that's like, abuse me, abuse me, abuse me. That's how I
Oh.
felt, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So he wound up being abusive. And luckily, I was able to escape that relationship after a
Good.
couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But he committed suicide,
Mm-hmm.
and so I didn't get to confront him. I didn't get to confront my brother because my brother had passed away. So I wrote them both letters
Mm-hmm.
while this whole pandemic was going on. I wrote them both a confrontation letter. And then
Mm-hmm.
I went to their graves. I looked them up, found where they were both buried,
Wow.
went to their graves, and recorded myself reading the letter to them,
Mm-hmm.
which I think I probably ad-libbed half of the letter, even though it was in my hands and I was reading, but I just added a little bit to it because I felt that I still needed that. Like I
Yeah,
still
that closure.
had it, yeah, I still had this deep-seated hatred
Right.
for them that I needed to purge out of my body
Mm-hmm.
because it was still affecting me in a negative manner.
Right.
So that's what I did. And people probably, driving by the cemetery thought I was crazy, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
I'm shouting and yelling. And, if I had something, I'd probably had thrown it at the headstones. But it really did help.
Mm-hmm.
It really did help me feel so much better
Mm-hmm.
to get that out.
I
And,
never hated him.
oh, that's good.
I never did. I felt sorry for him. For a
Yeah.
person that would have to do that, they have to be seriously demented and sick in their mind, so much so that
Yes.
they need more help than any other normal person. And that's the way I thought about it.
Hmm.
And, that's why I told right away. Like, I didn't
That's a
wait.
much healthier thought
Yeah.
process. It
Yeah.
really is.
And, and even when he passed away, I was like, well, hey, he passed away and he was still doing it because there were police reports about him doing it
Oh.
too. And he was in jail for one young lady.
Hmm.
And it was like, wow, that poor guy. I mean, I felt sorry for him because to go through life having to do that, to be that kind of person, to be that way, it's not good. It's
No.
definitely not something that's, and a lot of people may look at me and say, oh, well, how could you feel sorry for them? I do feel sorry for them. Doesn't mean that I approve of what they've done.
Right.
Obviously, I don't. But feeling sorry for their mental, if they have a mental issue, they
Hmm.
have something that's really, they're like they say, like we used to say, a screw is loose somewhere.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's definitely
So
something missing
something is
with
missing.
them.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
So,
But
wow. And what do you suggest a person do? Do you suggest counseling and
absolutely.
hypnotherapy and writing things down and maybe even making that letter, that confrontation letter? I mean, maybe the
Absolutely.
person is alive. How do you deliver? Do you deliver it? Do you have it
So,
mailed?
so one thing that I did when I did the confrontation letter is I put together kind of this is how you should do it if this is what
Mm-hmm.
you want to do. But the first thing that I would always tell a survivor is you need to get therapy, and you need to go to a therapist that specializes in this, because one mistake that people will make sometimes is just picking somebody out of the yellow pages. Well, yellow
Yeah.
pages doesn't really exist
No.
anymore. They just
No.
Google people now. Um,
Yeah.
but you really need to do your research on the therapist. My
Mm-hmm.
very first time of going to therapy, somebody recommended a forensic therapist for me. When I started my story, in telling him, about my dad and my brother, and telling them who they were, he actually laughed at me. And I say he laughed at me. I Now stepping back from it, I don't think he laughed at me. I think it my story is so absurd because my dad was a judge
Oh my
and a
gosh.
Sunday school teacher,
Oh,
and my brother was an altar boy in the Catholic Church. And so I think that when I said these things to him, he didn't know how to react to it
right. So
because
it
it's
wasn't a laugh,
so
like it was an
absurd.
uncomfortable laugh,
But at
basically.
the time, that was
Yeah.
devastating to me. And I didn't go back. I never saw him again. And it took me
Mm-hmm.
another couple years to try it again.
Right.
So the first thing that I tell people is definitely get therapy, but do your research
Right.
and make sure that you're good. And I always tell people to check out rain.org, RAINN.org,
Mm-hmm.
because they are fantastic,
Okay.
and they will help you find the right person.
Wow. Wow.
Once you feel strong enough and
Mm-hmm.
you want to do a confrontation letter, there's several ways to do it. You can write it all out, and then you can actually sit across the way from like an empty chair, and read your letter to an empty chair, envisioning that person sitting there. Or you can
Right.
ask a really good friend or loved one to sit in the chair across from you so that you have a person that you're talking to
Mm-hmm.
when you read the letter out loud. Another way is if they are passed away, like mine, you go to
Mm-hmm.
their grave, and you don't have to film it. I did because of what I'm doing. But go to their grave and read it out loud and get those emotions out. Don't worry about what other people think. You
Right.
yell and scream and cry, and if you want to
Mm-hmm.
throw things at that headstone, throw
Do
things at
it.
that headstone.
That's right.
You need to get all that out, because
Mm-hmm.
you won't heal with all that hatred and anger
Right.
inside you. You
You're
can be
right.
angry at what's happened to you, but being angry, that angry at another person, also affects you negatively.
It does.
Um, but I really don't ever tell people to mail it to their abuser, because I'm always afraid that they've abused that person once. I don't know how they would react to
Mm-hmm.
receiving the letter. If it's a
Right.
situation where they feel safe enough that the person won't come back at them, fine, go ahead. If you
Mm-hmm.
feel safe enough confronting them face to face, I always
Right.
say just do it in a safe public place, or if you're in therapy, ask
Mm-hmm.
them to come to your therapist office and have the therapist there with you.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that it's something that all survivors should do, but they
Mm-hmm.
need to do it at their comfort level and at their safety level.
Right. And the there's so many different ways to get this done, but everyone should have their own personal way of doing it. Everybody has a specific way that they like to get over certain things, or
Absolutely.
there's it could be different for every single last one.
Mhm.
And I hope that everybody at the sound of my voice that's going through anything would be safe, because within that first 24 hours to 2 weeks of leaving an abuser, their life is on the line.
That's the most dangerous time. It
Hmm.
really is. And you hear the horror stories all the time. Um, when I left, I was lucky that I had a place to go to, that they were going to keep me safe.
Hmm.
They would not let him near me. I know not everybody has that,
Right.
but I will say that the shelters have gotten a lot better.
Hmm.
There are some great ones out there that will help you get back on your feet, get your own place, make sure you're safe the entire time.
Hmm.
Um, I know that people are afraid to leave abusive situations because of money or because they have children. And I tell them, you know, looking at the way you're living right now, is that how you want your son or daughter to live when they grow up?
Right, because they're learning this. They're going to mimic
That
it.
they will absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely just,
Yeah.
and that is one of my proudest things, is that I broke that cycle
Right.
before I had my kids. And they have grown up to be very independent
Mm-hmm.
and very self-assured. And they actually have both gotten in trouble at school for standing up to bullies,
Wow.
because they won't take it. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you are not going to be bullying my friends. You're not going to bully, kids in the class. And
Mm-hmm.
both of my kids have had to have a talk with the principal, because they've, I mean, my daughter's now in college, but
Mm-hmm.
when they were in like junior high, I think it was both of them were in junior high, and they both got in trouble with the principal for standing up to bullies, and
Yeah. I
maybe not
understand
the
that.
most appropriate ways, but I
I
was
know
proud of
that.
them.
Well, see, my kids, they were karate kids.
Hmm.
Both my kids. I said, you know what? My children are going to learn to defend themselves. And at a very young age, I taught them what was appropriate touching and not to, you know what I mean?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I told them exactly what my mother told me. You're not going to get in trouble. If someone touches you the wrong way, please let me know, you
Oh
know?
yeah.
And so things
That's
like that. But let me tell you, I am so happy that you were on the show today. There's so many different things that we could talk about. We just don't have the time. How can people reach you?
Sure. So I have a website. It's emergingfromthedark.com. I'm on Twitter. Everything's emerging from the dark. So on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But yeah, if they go to my website, I've got everything listed there on how they
Wonderful.
can contact me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being
Thank
on the
you.
show.
I
Oh my
appreciate
gosh.
it.
I
Thank you.
appreciate you being on the show. This is such a wonderful show, and this is so needed because
Mhm.
so many people are in so much danger. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm not a police officer. I'm just a podcaster, guys. But if you're determined to leave the situation, get with someone that can help you leave safely. Just don't leave.
Right.
You have to leave strategically.
Hmm.
When I can't divulge this information too much, but I know that when a person I knew wanted to leave, they left when the person was at work, and
Hmm.
they knew they would be gone at least 8 hours, and they had everything already ready to go. So, and they were helped, and
Hmm.
they moved away, and they changed their names because
Oh
it was
yes.
really a bad situation.
Yeah.
And the children changed their names. Everything was changed. And so they're safe now.
That's good.
They're in a different state.
Wow.
Yeah, they're in a different
Wow.
state. And they have been helped, and they are on their own now for many, many years. But you have to leave safely. Don't just get up and go. A lot of times that's just not the answer. And I realize that, I may be telling someone to stay in a situation that they don't like at this time, but definitely find a shelter. Always, always find someone that can help you.
Hmm.
Um, and emerging from the dark, I'm sure
Absolutely.
she
I
can.
have all kinds of places that they
There you
can,
go.
yeah.
There you go. Thank you again so much for being
Thank
on the show.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has been an amazing show, very relevant, and could save a life, and I hope it does. If you have a situation, please do not make a comment below. Do not comment below. Do not. If you know of a situation, just, you can say, hey, I agree with you, and that would be it. Okay. All right. So definitely, I thank you so much for being a part of this wonderful show. And until next time, guys, don't forget, you know, to emerge from the dark. All right. Bye,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
I dare to be different. 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 I dare. I dare. I dare to be different. I dare to be different.